Welcome, everyone. My name is Jack Rome, and on behalf of the Center for Awakening, I am glad to welcome you to Meet the Speaker, a live series with speakers from the upcoming 3-day online immersive conference, Awake in Stillness, The End of Dreaming, taking place from November 8th to 10th. This series is designed to give you a brief taste of the direct experience that you can expect from each session during the conference. Kavi Jezzie Hockaday, also known as Kaviji, is a prolific philosopher-poet, musician, and spiritual teacher whose transformative poems resonate with readers around the world. As co-spiritual director of the Amoda Maa Foundation, Kavi has been immersed in a field of unconditional love, having supported Amoda Maa's teachings in a practical way since 2019. Nowadays, Kavi offers one-to-one sessions and public meetings as part of the Amoda Maa Teachings. Kavi's conference session is titled Finding Presence and Grace in Turbulent Times. His session will invite us to recognize that even in times of turbulence, there is an undercurrent of grace and presence. Despite the phenomena of the world, true freedom lies in recognizing that we arise from an ocean of being. So, Kavi, welcome. Thank you so much once again for joining me. I know that you had some things you might want to share, but with the brief time that we have today, could you share a little bit about this, give us a little bit of a taste, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jack. I'm delighted to be the last interviewee on the whole panel, the whole plethora of people that you've had on, and it's a very great privilege to have been invited again to do this conference. And so, you know what to say. I actually heard Bill speaking earlier today, I think, Bill Free, and what he said really moved me in a way because I felt his equanimity of speaking to, particularly in a way in America, the election cycle we're in the midst of. Amoda, who you interviewed yesterday, moved to America in 2016, and I never realized that there could be so much kind of seemingly apparent division in a place, and it's obviously been a hotbed of division. And I loved what Bill said, because what I speak to is actually being in the world. That's where the juice really is, and that's where the challenge really is for us to discover a deeper equanimity and union within ourselves in the midst of the turbulence of the world, not the theoretical turbulence, but actually the nitty-gritty of relationship, of trouble in politics, of all of these kind of things. And it's not easy, because the world is tenacious and the world of mind is tenacious. So I kind of speak to, in a way, the beauty that is available to us even in the midst of difficult times. And I would say that, you know, my sessions, as they have been before, are very much kind of trying to get into the grace at the heart of us, the grace in the deep, in the silence, in the stillness. So however that manifests in the 90 minutes that we have in our session, I'll be speaking to that and inviting the inquiry into that in real time, I hope. So having said that, I know our time is short and I can gabble on, and I'm trying not to, but Jack, I wrote a poem. It's sort of yesterday, I think, you know, this Such as It Is. And this kind of describes, I guess, what we'll be speaking to. It's called There Is a Grace. There is a grace inside us, deep in the heart, in the soul. We touch it in silence and presence, in stillness and in deep intimacy with our own experience. But to court this grace, we must dive in through the many layers of self, through the darkness and the shadow, through the thick layers of belief, through perception and thought, and beyond mind itself. We are invited to let go of all that is illusory, to fall out of the world and into the unknown. It sounds scary to the self, but this is not a journey of the self. It is a journey to let go of the self. With persistence, surrender, and the courage of a warrior, we fall into the arms of eternity, the unknown, the silence, and the stillness of the divine. And there we may know grace, and it will be nameless and indescribable and beautiful, and we will know it as home. So in many ways, that kind of encapsulates what we'll be speaking to. I find that the poetry, it was never my intention to become a poet. I've always had an artistic temperament and, as a musician. But I guess the journey over the last, particularly 20 years with Amoda Maa has kind of driven me mad enough within myself to turn me into some kind of mystic poet. And I had to give voice to the love that I've touched. And I found that the language or the fragrance of poetry, I'm not really a poet, these are just words that are hung together somehow, you know, but there's something about it that has the capacity to bypass the mind that seeks to understand what awakening is. And I don't particularly, I'm not that good and I'm not an expert at speaking to the mind that seeks to understand. And I've found that poetry can somehow wiggle into the gaps, through the cracks in us. And everybody haven't met anybody yet who hasn't got a crack in them. And the poetry is, it gets in there. And I'm not interested in the poetry. I'm interested in the crack. I'm interested in the cracks in us because that is where the light shines. That is where the beauty is. That is where the healing is. And that healing is not just the healing of the self, it's a healing that returns us somehow to this grace of union that I think is available right here, right now. It's not somewhere up in the future. It's kind of, if you taste it. I wrote another thing. Whatever strategies have been employed to get through life and to protect the self will inevitably come undone if awakening to the truth of you is courted with total devotion. And it's the last line. It's the last line that speaks to me. It's the last line that says what I what I bring, what I want to encourage. And that was my path. And we all speak to our own path. All of the teachers, you listen to them all, they're all talking, describing their own path. Let's face it, really. And so this was the path for me, a total devotion, because I think it was Rumi who said something about half-heartedness doesn't lead to the palace of the majesty of something. I'm very clumsy about that, but it's the same thing. A totality. You give yourself to it because the mind is capricious, tenacious, and it comes around, and I understand that. And there we are in the safety zone. And there's something about having to fall out of the safety zone, the mental safety zone that says, yes, I want awakening, but I won't go there. I won't go to that place. I won't really go to the unknown. And we work with a lot of people who get to seemingly the edge of the abyss kind of thing. And there you can hang. I mean, it's okay. You can hang there for years. It doesn't really matter because it's all okay anyway. But there's something about knowing, if you like, that abyss is a little bit of a trickster, you know. It's a little bit tricky. So that's kind of, in a way, the fragrance of what
Mm,
I'm going to speak to in my session somehow.
mm, mm, mm. Well, wow. I mean, we spoke about this a little bit before we went live about, I very much so resonate with, you could say maybe the formats and the stylings in which your practice and your teachings take as a musician and songwriter myself. And I adore and resonate with what you say about it's not about the poetry, it's about the cracks. And poetry has a way of slipping through the cracks. And I was imagining water, of course, doing that and slipping through. And that is absolutely my experience when I write music. I mean, I'm writing lyrics about this. It's about that. Like what else would it be about? um, but you mentioned totality of devotion. Are there reminders that there is a total devotion, or are reminders to one's being no longer needed if you have full total devotion?
You mean like other practices and other things, still things to do?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. In my case, I use music to remind myself. I create, songs that have the messages that I need to remember for 6 months later when I had a particular insight. I record that insight and then listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. Um, do you have an understanding of an analog to that?
Well, I think you that that there's no, I don't speak to formulaic kind of ways. I
Sure.
think whatever your soul gravitates towards, give yourself to that. As a musician, your soul gravitates to that. It was like Rumi, do whatever you can, do whatever the soul calls. If you need to dance, dance. If you need to, yeah, if you need to tear something open of yourself, then you must do that. Yeah, because in a way, I've discovered for myself that, certainly for my, you know, a gradual awakening over a long period of time, was that it was pretty wild. I had a lot of stuff to clear. I had a lot of, deeply embedded beliefs, conditions, grievances, arguments, resistance, all of these factors, all of these, qualities within myself that actually took a lot of guts, patience, surrender, meditation, catharsis, everything like that. And beauty, of course, inherent in that is beauty. But there was no single thing that carried me to, into the dissolvement. But the one thing that did carry me through all of the catharsis and the meditation, I was never hooked on a destination. I had never had that idea of a destination back then. I was too busy tearing off what was uncomfortable, or what was difficult, or what was impeding my own sense of freedom. But by and by, I realized actually it depends on how much I give of myself to it. If I'm prepared to stay here, no matter what, no matter what comes at me, very much in that sense, like, Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and said, pretty much let's call it in contemporary terms, I'm not budging until something happens. I'm not moving from here until something opens or something happens. What? I don't know. But I know that it's down, if there is a part of us that has will, self-will, it's not that will, it's the will to stay even when the storm comes, even when the confusion is there, even when doubt comes along. It's the willingness to stay and stay and stay. And something about the universe hears that, hears the call to one's totality, says, okay, if you want that, then we're going to deliver it to you. and it will throw up either quickly or over a long period of time, usually over time. Every Mara, every resistance, every obstacle, every grievance, every hidden belief, everything that you've got, every strategy that you might have held on to in order to somehow keep the world, either the world at bay or to protect oneself from oneself in a way, from the difficult feelings and all that. So totality is the name of the game in whatever you do. That's the key is not totality as a theory. The thing is, in a way, totality is just being here as present as possible and as open as possible to the capacity that we can. No more than that, only to the capacity that we can. And then when we fall out of that place or get distracted or become reactive again, well, that's okay. Just notice and then return with the totality. You can only do what you can do. You can only show up with what you can show up with. Everything else becomes a hair shirt that we start beating ourselves with. Oh, I didn't get it right this time, but next time I will. That is not where my focus is. My focus is if we're here now, and in this session, that here now, I'm total with you here now, and I hope that you're total with me here now. And this is a good moment. But equally, we could both go off this Zoom call. There could be trouble. Yeah, there could be relational trouble or world trouble or something. Can we be total in that? When the trouble rises up from inside us, can we be total with that? So in our session that we do, at the conference, it'll be very much inviting, seducing, courting people to come along and leave some of the theoretical stuff behind and let's just show up. And I think keep trying to close it down because I'm aware of time. So we'll just see. Yeah, we see what happens. I'm a great believer that intimacy is another word. It's a hot word. Totality is a hot word. Kindness is a hot word. Hot in the sense that we tend to sort of either don't know what they are or we put them into a bracket that says, I know what that is. Surrender is a great one because immediately the spiritual path is always talking about surrender, but the ego mind says surrender, no way. Yeah, because surrender means there's an enemy. So we objectified subject and object immediately. And it also paints surrender as such a bad thing because you have surrendered to the enemy. And that's the last thing the ego would want to do because it's the last thing the self wants to do. So these kind of words, are words that I court and I bring to the table with as much beauty as possible. And that's intimacy. Our capacity to be intimate is shielded by our defensive structures and our avoidance of deep sense of vulnerability. And yet the opening that I'm talking about cannot really happen unless we allow ourselves to open into this intimacy. And that means allowing vulnerability. I'll end there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for giving us that taste. And it's wonderful to hear you speak about this and to clearly speak about it from that exact vulnerable willingness to just be totally engaged in whatever it is that is right in front of your presence at any given moment, I guess it would be.
Jack, it's the only way that I've found that I can get through this existence.
Yeah.
I've reached the age of 65 and I've tried a million strategies in my life as a musician, as a tender heart, in all sorts of ways, addicted for 20 years, deflect, all that kind of stuff. And it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable being me. Yeah. But I know there are millions of people out there, or lots of people out there, and a lot of them on the conference and come to spirituality who are equally as sensitive and equally as vulnerable and equally as tender as I am. I'm not special in any way. It's if I have anything to share with anybody, it's just that I will show up with that. I won't try and pretend that I am other than that. I can't do it because the veil is too thin and life is too short. And there's something so preciously beautiful about that tenderness, about that vulnerability. And I think we have to reclaim it. I believe that we have the capacity to reclaim it because the pseudoness that goes on in what I perceive as the superficial world, full of the ego arguments and stuff, looks insane. And I'm for sanity, but this is sanity. It's just that it's not easy. But it's better to work with your sensitive disposition rather than trying to fight it, because that just creates such suffering. And I've got 20 years left. I just so done with suffering that if it means I have to bear this and share this, then so be it. I will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny, you know,
Yeah.
it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, like we said, this is a taste, so I guess we'll leave the rest for your session, but really grateful for you joining me here today and really appreciate that and just excited to see where this goes next
Yeah,
weekend.
beautiful. Okay,
Thank
Jack.
you.
Well, thanks a lot for prompting me and smiling at me at the good moments.
Of course. I mean, then what else am I gonna do, you know?
It's a good conference. I did, like I said before, I listened to Bill
Yeah.
talking about it, and it's the biggest conference yet that you guys have done. And there are a lot of really good, wise speakers, my wife included, but some great Advaita teachers and non-duality, and everything. And in these times, this is a great conference to come to, I think, because it draws us back to the equanimity of our being, and we can stay still because the chances are it's going to be turbulent for the next who knows how long. There's going to be turbulence, and if we can root ourselves in this somehow. Yeah, so I'm delighted. This the serendipity of the conference being on with this election cycle and the drama that's playing out. Then
Mhm.
that's a blessing, and I would encourage everybody to come to it and be part of it. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, feel the same. Well, I mean, on that note, I'll, remind us all that are watching here now or watching later. We really do hope you'll join us at Awaken Stillness. And it's very soon from at the time of this live stream is November 8th to 10th. And you can actually register for free at purepresenceconferences.com. And until then, we hope to see you there. But in the meantime, Kavi, thank you so much.
Bless you, man. Thank you so
Bless
much.
you. All
Have a
right.
good evening.
Take care.